At 4:13 a.m., over Belgor Forest, a Russian air defense unit fired a single missile. Their target was a Ukrainian drone barely 2 feet wide, and it vanished in a clean flash. Russian and Chinese troops marked it as a confirmed kill, but they were unaware that the drone was just a decoy. They believed the threat was over, but the truth is, they had just handed Ukraine the exact map it needed for the strike that was seconds away. The decoy was built with the purpose of transmitting, luring, and then being destroyed afterward. Before it exploded, it had already sent encrypted data back to Ukraine. This included coordinates, movement patterns, heat signatures, and even the radar frequencies of the Russian convoy below. The forest was full of military trucks, 20 in total. All of these were carrying newly delivered Chinese howitzers. It was supposed to be a secret arms transfer, the first of its kind between Moscow and Beijing. But now, thanks to that one destroyed drone, the whole operation had been exposed. This moment didn't happen by chance. Ukraine had been watching this convoy from space for almost 2 weeks. It started when commercial satellite images caught something odd at a cargo terminal in Vladivostok. A cluster of shipping containers had arrived late at night under military escort. It was covered in tarps and stamped with Chinese industrial codes. For intelligence analysts in Kiev, that was a red flag. So, they traced the movement. The containers left the port and began heading west by rail under heavy guard. The route matched one used before for high-priority military shipments. This was a big sign that it wasn't a simple trade. That's when Ukraine's intelligence agency launched a covert surveillance mission they called Ghost March. In this mission, instead of sending bombers or missiles, Ukraine deployed silent, tireless eyes in the sky. And by that, we mean high-altitude drones. These drones were disguised as radar signatures that looked like migrating birds, followed the convoy's every move. They recorded everything, including rest stops, engine heat, fuel consumption, and the duration of each guard rotation. Artificial intelligence back in Kiev processed it all, building a complete behavioral map. By the time the convoy entered Belgor Forest, Ukraine already knew its rhythm. The decoy drone that Russia shot down was only the beginning. It was programmed to provoke, to make the Russians reveal their defenses. When the Tor M2 missile system locked on, Ukraine's monitoring network captured every pulse of its radar, its location, and its timing. In military terms, that was the same as stealing the enemy's playbook mid-match. 5 miles away, inside a camouflaged armored vehicle buried under branches and thermal netting, Ukrainian operators were watching the whole thing. The moment the drone feed went dark, they smiled. The missile launch had confirmed their enemy's exact position. Everything they needed for the next phase was already in motion. A series of smaller drones had been circling high above the forest all night, listening to radio chatter and mapping electronic signals. They were invisible to the human eye, floating just below the radar ceiling. At 4:14 a.m., that server processed the final update. The convoy was stationary, the air defenses had fired once, and the Orlan reconnaissance drones had not yet detected anything unusual. That narrow window was all Ukraine needed. The signal went out. Authorization was granted. Back in Belgor, a sealed compartment inside the armored vehicle unlocked. The pilot programs were activated. 25 FPV drones powered on at the same time. Each drone was small, almost toy-like, but armed with a shaped charge warhead. It was perfectly designed to punch through steel. They would fly erratically, swarm in random bursts, and imitate the motion of birds to confuse enemy radar. Engineers called it chaotic masking. The drones would look like static, like noise. The drones lifted into the air, but Russian sensors didn't react. The Tor M2 radar continued scanning for large linear targets like missiles, aircraft, or fast-moving projectiles. It couldn't interpret the fluttering, irregular shapes on its screen. That's exactly what Ukraine wanted. While the radar systems ignored them, the drones began forming a digital net around the convoy. Each one assigned itself a different truck, keeping steady altitude and visual lock. Meanwhile, the convoy's security team still believed the skies were clear. The trucks were ordered to resume movement in 10 minutes. 10 minutes they would never get. Every Ukrainian operator had a live feed now on screen. The forest glowed with heat signatures. The lead operator was so focused at this time because the timing had to be perfect. If they attacked too early, the Russians could scramble air support too late and the convoy would scatter. So they waited for one last piece of confirmation: the Orlan drones. If Ukraine could jam those, the strike would be unstoppable. And that's exactly what the next drone in line was about to do. For a moment, everything worked exactly as planned. Then the screens began to flicker. The Ukrainian operation saw that static was cutting through the feed. He had seen this before. Somewhere out there, another set of eyes had found them, and it was trying to jam the drones. A Russian reconnaissance drone was in the air, broadcasting electromagnetic waves that scrambled anything in range. The signal was clean, strong, and close. It was not a mistake. The Ukrainian operator switched to the backup link, rerouting control through a secondary relay, but the interference deepened. On the horizon, the faint sound of propellers grew louder. The Orlan 10 had locked the area. Miles away, the Russian drone crew noticed strange flickers on their radar, irregular. One operator picked up the radio and quickly called the ground commander. Within minutes, the forest came alive. The convoy stopped. Guards ran out of their vehicles. Searchlights swept across the trees. One soldier lifted a shoulder-mounted jammer and fired a narrow pulse into the air. 3 drones dropped instantly, dead weight falling into darkness. Inside the Ukrainian vehicle, alarms went off. The operator didn't flinch. He knew what losing 3 meant. They had his coordinates, but running wasn't an option. So he played his next card. He triggered a command called Mirror Signal. It was a digital trick, bouncing the Russian drone's own frequency back at it. The signal trick worked perfectly. The Orlan's navigation went haywire. Its GPS stopped responding. Its coordinates started looping, and within seconds it thought the Ukrainian drones were miles away. The Russian drone turned in slow circles, chasing nothing. Its camera spun uselessly, trying to focus on an empty patch of sky. It was blind, and that was all Ukraine needed. The armored hatch opened, and a single Switchblade 600 drone launched into the air, bigger than the rest, built for endurance, carrying a 10-pound warhead that could slice through steel. It climbed higher and higher, reaching 15,000 feet before locking onto its target. Using a thermal sensor, it scanned the forest until it found a faint orange glow, the Orlan's engine heat. From that point, it only took seconds. The Switchblade tilted, accelerated, and dove. There was no warning, no radar lock, no sound, just a quick flash high above the trees. The Russian drone exploded in midair, torn apart into burning pieces that fell like sparks through the dark forest. But that victory came with a price. The Russian convoy below had seen everything. They didn't need a radio signal to figure out what happened. The explosion told them exactly where to look. Ground crews started shouting orders. Soldiers aimed portable jammers toward the tree line, flooding the area with interference. Anti-tank units readied their launchers, waiting for coordinates. The celebration was over. Now they were on the offensive. At 4:18 a.m., the forest trembled again, but this time it wasn't drones. It was something much bigger. A Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopter had just taken off from a nearby Russian base. It was given the order to find whoever was controlling the swarm and end them. Up in the sky, that helicopter looked unstoppable. 12 tons of armor, 2 engines, and Vickers laser-guided missiles. It started scanning the forest with thermal sensors, searching for a single hot shape that didn't belong, and then it found one. A small, steady heat signature hiding under branches and camouflage netting. The Ukrainian control vehicle. The Ka-52 pilot steadied his aim and got a lock inside the M113. Alarms screamed. The operator looked up from his screens and saw the red warning flash. Laser tracking was detected, and he had only 20 seconds. Quickly, he reached for a switch labeled Phantom. The pilot fired. The missile locked onto the false heat and detonated, lighting up the treetops with a massive flash. Inside the M113, everything shook, but the vehicle stayed intact. The pilot thought he had scored a kill. He turned for another pass, unaware that his radar had just picked up something tiny flying straight toward him. It was one of the drones, but this one was different. It wasn't carrying an explosive. It carried an EMP charge. The drone climbed fast, heading straight for the helicopter's underside. The pilot ignored it, too focused on his next missile run. And then, silence. A pulse of invisible energy hit the Ka-52 like a lightning strike. Every screen in the cockpit went black. The targeting system froze. The pilot yanked the stick, trying to climb, but the helicopter moved like a dead weight. The Ka-52 pulled up hard, barely clearing the treetops before retreating, blind and broken, back toward base. The Ukrainian operator watched it disappear from the radar, one threat down. Now came the final move. He looked at the map glowing on his display, red dots marking the remaining 22 drones hovering high above the forest. Each one had locked onto a truck below, tracking its heat signature. He sent the command to engage. The swarm dived together. The first hit came on the lead truck. A shaped charge punched straight through the fuel tank, and half a second later, a wall of fire tore through the line. The second drone hit a howitzer carrier, setting off ammunition inside. The third crashed into the command vehicle, knocking out communications completely. Within seconds, the entire road was burning. Every truck that tried to escape was hunted down. The explosions spread down the convoy, a chain reaction of fire and shrapnel. By the time it ended, 15 brand new Chinese howitzers were destroyed. The explosions burned for nearly an hour, sending a column of smoke so high it was visible from across the border. At sunrise, satellites captured the aftermath. There were black craters where trucks once stood, melted shells and burned trees in a half-mile stretch of destruction. One crater measured over 30 feet wide. But the worst damage was not what could be seen. When the EMP drone fired, it didn't just disable the helicopter, it also fried the convoy's local network. Communications, radar, everything went offline. For 3 full days, Russia's Belgorod region was without any signals or updates. When the system finally came back, they realized what they had lost. $70 million worth of Chinese military gear was gone before it ever reached the front, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Without those howitzers, Russia's artillery firepower near Kharkiv collapsed. Ukrainian units pushed forward within hours, reclaiming lost ground. But the real shock hit Moscow. Commanders started asking hard questions about their so-called great partnership with China. Those expensive new PLZ-05 howitzers had never fired a single round, and now they were nothing but burnt scrap photos of the wreckage spread online, showing the Chinese serial markings clearly. And all of it happened because of one armored vehicle, one operator, and a swarm of 25 drones launched and detonated with near-perfect precision 10 minutes. That's all it took to turn a $70 million convoy into smoke. What do you think? After a strike this precise, where do you think Ukraine will hit next? Tell us in the comment section below. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more updates on this war. Goodbye for now.